Hello and welcome everyone to our 92nd episode of The Little Inside. I guess I'm still Tobi. Well, this week we're going to talk a little bit about insecurity and low self-esteem. So let's get started right after the intro. So what is low self-esteem really? And what is insecurity and how are they related? Do they have anything to do with one another? So first of all, I think low self-esteem is a state of mind that believes itself to be inferior to everyone else. It believes itself to be unworthy, unpleasant, bad in some way. Somehow we see ourselves as a negative entity that doesn't get things together, that can't do anything properly, and then we really believe in this self-image, this cluster of beliefs and thoughts and emotions. It's to such an extent, really, that it becomes our personality. Based upon that, then insecurity comes into play. And insecurity simply is a manifestation that arises out of a state of low self-esteem. You could really say that low self-esteem and insecurity always come hand in hand. I was wondering, where does low self-esteem actually come from? And I think there are two sources or two causes of low self-esteem. The first one is all the patterns, all the thoughts, all these belief systems that have been installed very early on in your childhood, and like throughout our entire lifetime, they find themselves confirmed again and again. That builds your low self-esteem. So we can say one cause of low self-esteem is previous low self-esteem, so the low self-esteem that you've experienced in the past. And of course, at some point in your life, and this is never just one point, but it's a multitude of points, a multitude of events that somehow have installed and then nourished that belief that you're somehow not good enough. And that might be, for example, a moment of when you have failed and you've been really punished badly for that failure. And so it becomes this kind of trauma. It turns into a sort of self-belief. And over time, that self-belief becomes kind of, it's almost like cemented into our conscious and our subconscious mind, and gradually, eventually over time turns into a whole persona that seeks confirmation. You see, our mind continuously seeks for confirmation. Let's say I'm holding a certain belief about myself that I'm not good enough, then I will subconsciously look for confirmation. So everything that I can't do really well, let's say I forget the keys in the house, I have to I forget the keys in the house, I have to go back into the house. And so my wife reminds me, Tobi, you're forgetting the keys all the time. Then that might fuel into that already strong low self-esteem that I have. And so another event gets added on to the low self-esteem that's already there, resulting in further insecurity, resulting in further errors, which further more fuel this sense of low self-esteem. So it's kind of a vicious cycle that most people find themselves in. So the two causes are past low self-esteem, so previous moments where you had low self-esteem, and the second cause of low self-esteem is that we are habitually feeding into these moments of low self-esteem. We're basically feeding the beast. We're nourishing it again and again. And how would we do this? Actually, if I asked you, do you want to have low self-esteem? Would you like to feed it? Or we could also say water it like a plant. You would say no, right? I don't want to feel unworthy and bad about myself. Nobody wants that. So how comes that we're feeding it? Or how can we feed such a state then? The answer is really simple. This happens through not being conscious. You don't know what's going on. Most of us are helplessly overwhelmed by the immensity of the experiences that are inside of our own mind. There's so many thoughts, so many emotions. It's so chaotic. We don't know what to do with it, so we rather distract ourselves away from it most of the time. keeping all these subconscious patterns alive and well. So where do we get real self-esteem from? So one, I believe we get real self-esteem when we are inspiring ourselves, when we are building self-respect. In order to build self-respect, you have to do things that you respect, and you have to become aware of those things that you are doing that are worthy of your respect. So let's say, for example, you say, I want to get up tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and do half an hour of meditation before I go to work. Now, next morning comes at 6 a.m., the alarm goes off, but you don't get up. There you go. Here you're feeding into a state that is not, you can't respect yourself like that, right? So every time you say you're going to do something and you're not following through, then you're building low self-esteem. You're basically disappointing yourself. So you want to abandon actions that lead to yourself disappointing yourself. That means you have to align your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. What you say that you will do, you need to also do it. You need to follow it through. If you know that you will probably not be able to do it, then don't say that you will do it. That's a way of building self-respect, and with that, better self-esteem. Another way is you want to do things that are kind and compassionate, really inspiring yourself with good action, good attitude, being a person that you would respect. So that's certainly one way of building self-esteem. The second way of building higher self-esteem is by completely re-identifying ourselves with awareness. The thing is that most of us are heavily identified either with our thought patterns, with our emotions, with our body, with our physical actions, or our environmental structures. This is a problem because these things are unreliable. Essentially, they are continuously in a state of flux or change. So even though you can temporarily identify with wholesome states of mind and skillful states of mind that are based on gratitude, on kindness, that lead to a healthy sense of self-respect and that inspire yourself, that is perfectly fine and absolutely recommended as a very basic practice that we should never really abandon on the spiritual path. But there is a deeper level to us, and that deeper level is very often overlooked. So when I'm saying re-identifying ourselves with awareness, it means that you are rediscovering yourself as awareness or consciousness itself. Instead of being hopelessly lost in the various moods of your mind, such as low self-esteem, feeling bad about yourself, you can even say that your mind has a whole lot of selves in it. There is the low self-esteem me, there is the happy me, there is the kind me, there is, there's so many selves in our head, right? And they all pop up occasionally and show their face. And so when low self-esteem shows its face, that instead of being completely identified with it, you can actually be aware of it. How am I doing this? It's really simple. I notice, for example, where in my body am I feeling the state of low self-esteem? Then I become aware of this as a feeling, and it is just this. It is just a feeling. There's nothing to it. Of course, I have to train myself in meditation practice formally to be able to do that properly during the day when it hits me. For example, if there's a feeling of low self-esteem, it takes me a few seconds, maybe a few deep breaths, to kind of tune in and feel and get in touch with my emotional state and then recognize it as just feeling. After that, I recognize that I am not that feeling, but I am what is aware of that feeling. I would repeat that for thoughts. I would repeat that for physical states in my body. And of course, we have to do this again and again and again in order for there to be a shift inside of ourselves, a shift of awareness. The shift is away from being heavily lost and identified in temporary states that pass through, like thoughts, emotions, and physical states and so forth, to being aware of those states. So that is a very, very simple practice. And the more you're doing that with, of course, qualified guidance and help by your side so that you're always staying on a proper track, if you're doing that more and more, then there is this shift happening. And you're literally rediscovering yourself as consciousness or as awareness. And that leads to a very healthy sense of self-esteem. The third way is not to identify with anything whatsoever. So you're neither identifying with passing states, thoughts, emotions, physical states, nor are you identified with awareness. Now that's a tricky one, it's a tough one, and I'm not fully qualified to talk about this in detail, but this is a result of proper practice. The deeper we come onto that path, the more this kind of direction becomes clear that there is nobody there. Ajahn Brahm refers to that as, in a funny way, a no self-esteem. So it is a sort of esteem that is based on seeing that there is no such thing as a me. And so that's the most profound and the deep aspect of the path. And of course, once you are building a healthy sense of self-esteem, like let's say through positive and uplifting action, you're inspiring yourself, you start to feel gradually, slowly, day after day, you start to feel better about yourself. The insecurity, the level of insecurity that is falling away gradually in the same way that the low self-esteem turns into positive and good self-esteem. So you have this kind of change, right? They are dependent on one another. More self-esteem you have, the less insecurity there will be. And the more you feel comfortable, and I think this is a sense of good, healthy, a sense of self-security would be a sense of being at ease with yourself. That includes your messy states. It includes all the human emotions and thoughts that you're having continuously, that I'm having continuously, all of us are having continuously. To be okay with that, to be fine with that, to be relaxed, even though we're all quite messy. Or on the second level, to discover yourself as awareness, as an underlying current of consciousness that is much more stable and reliable than all the flimsy kind of states that pass through your mind. That leads to a much more healthy sense of presence and comfort in presence, therefore a more sense of security there. And of course, on the highest level, if there is nobody there that must be secured or that must be anything, then there is a total ease and total relaxation coming with that. That would be on the highest level. So depending on where you are on your spiritual path, on your spiritual level, you can find security on that level. So this is pretty much all that comes to mind right now about low self-esteem and insecurity. This little insight was mostly about discovering that there are 3 different layers in which we can build self-esteem, and with that our sense of security, our sense of comfort with ourselves. And I hope it was useful and meaningful for you guys. If you do have any questions, please write them down in the comment section below. I'm always happy reading your questions or your comments. I'm also happy to know that it helps some of you. And for now, I'm wishing you a wonderful next week full of healthy self-esteem. Respect yourself, inspire yourself, and everything will move uphill from there. Okay, so have a wonderful next week. Bye-bye.